off this countdown, we have the bodies. I mean, this one is a given. Most of the forbidden places in this world are labeled as so because they are dangerous. People that have trespassed have winded up dead. Snake Island is a good example. You all know about this island by now. It gets its name because it is covered in deadly snakes, including the golden lancehead viper, whose venom can melt human skin on contact. And if you're bit by them, you have a 3% survival rate. Urban legend goes that a fisherman ended up on shore. He was dead within minutes as the snakes took over his boat and ate him alive. Later, his bones were found in his dilapidated ship. But of course, Snake Island isn't the only forbidden place where trespassers' bodies were found. How about the story of the teens who tried to explore a secret cave? Unfortunately, all of them got trapped in this cave and drowned. Their bodies were later found when the area was drained. In our ninth spot, we have North Brother Island. If you're liking this video so far, then smash that like button. Also, it's Halloween here at the studio, so that's why I'm dressed as a farmer, cowgirl, cowboy? I don't know. Anyway, North Brother Island is a 20-acre island located in New York City's East River. This isolated island was nothing until there was a smallpox outbreak. So the government actually built a hospital on the island for the sick people to stay in quarantine. Then in 1943, the hospital was used for people with tuberculosis. Then in 1951, it was a rehabilitation center. But by the 60s, it was completely abandoned. All that's left now is the dilapidated buildings, which makes it forbidden to go to unless you have proper authorization. Anyways, there's a number of creepy things found on this island. One is the island's morgue. All the people who died were stored in this sketchy morgue. Where did the bodies go when the hospital was shut down? No one knows. The second creepy thing is that this island is filled with unmarked graves. Those that were buried were just shoved in shallow graves around the island. And of course, the island is said to be haunted, probably due to the fact that hundreds died there and didn't get a proper burial. In our 8th spot, we have Poveglia Island. This is another island plagued with a tragic past. During the Middle Ages, this island was used as a dumping ground for bodies consumed by the plague. In fact, so many people were dumped there that apparently 50% of the island soil consists of human remains. That's horrifying. No one should be growing anything there. Imagine getting a carrot growing out of... Anyway. But it doesn't stop there. In the 1920s, the island had a mental hospital, and the doctor there was not the best. In fact, he was corrupt, and he would experiment on the patients. Over the years, a number of people have bought the island, but soon after, they sell it. Because apparently, it's so terribly haunted. It's said that the souls of the deceased haunt the island, so that's a no from me. In our 7th spot, we have Disney's Discovery Island. This is a failed Disney park attraction that now lays abandoned. So Discovery Island opened in 1974. It was located in the middle of Bay Lake by Disney World, so part of the attraction was taking a boat to get there. Once on the island, it was like a miniature zoo. They had lots of exotic birds and activities to do. But in the end, Disney employees were caught doing messed up things like shooting and killing the birds or just treating them badly. People got word of that and they got canceled, and barely anyone would come. In 1999, they closed down, and no one is allowed to trespass on this island. In fact, it's patrolled, so if you get within 50 feet of the shoreline, you'll be asked to go back, and if you don't, you'll be arrested. But a couple of sneaky urban explorers have successfully managed to get on this island and wander around. One of the more creepier things they found was an abandoned animal hospital and nursery. Inside the hospital is a cooler filled with old medicine and medical supplies. Not only that, a number of creepy dead carcasses have been spotted on the island, including this one. I mean, it would be cool to wander around there, but it does look eerie now that all the buildings are dilapidated and overrun by nature. Coming in at number 6, we have the Paris Catacombs. Anybody seen the movie As Above, So Below? Apparently this real story was inspiration for that movie. So if you do go to Paris, you can go on a guided tour of the catacombs, but you need to stay on the path. It's very easy to get lost down there. There are apparently 150 miles of tunnels laid out in a maze-like fashion. Well, guess what? Back in the 1990s, an old dusty camcorder was found in one of the out-of-bounds areas in the catacombs. They wondered how on earth it got there. Upon playing it, they found it was footage of an unidentified male explorer wandering around the catacombs. At first, he was fascinated by what he's exploring, but soon he realizes that he's lost and gets frantic. He begins running through the tunnel, sometimes checking behind him to see if anyone is following him. Sadly, we don't know if he ever made it out alive. His body could still be down there today, and the recording is the last few minutes of his life. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Wittenoom, Australia. Honestly, I really want to go to Australia. Despite the big snakes and insects, it looks like a very beautiful place to visit. Except one area that you should never go, and that is Wittenoom. It's considered one of Australia's deadliest towns, and that's because it's crawling with blue asbestos. In 1937, blue asbestos was discovered in the city's gorge. Years later, miners were unearthing tons of asbestos from the ground. It wasn't until 1978 that the government started pushing people out of their homes. They realized how deadly it was for them to be living there. It was increasing the risk for cancer, and in some cases, people were already developing lung cancer just by living there. It would cost them too much to eradicate all the asbestos from their town, so they decided to just abandon it. In fact, they removed the town from road signs and maps, so people don't know its existence and don't wander there. In fact, if you do somehow stumble upon the town, you'll find tons of huge warning signs advising you to turn back. In our 4th spot, we have the Edgewood Medical Center. Have you ever wanted to explore a creepy abandoned medical center? If you said yes, then why? Do you have a death wish? No, just don't do it. Anyways, the Edgewood Medical Center is the infamous hospital in which serial killer John Wayne Gacy was born. Also, it's a very popular site for urban explorers. No matter how many signs or barricades they put up, people will always find a way to get in. Urban explorers have reported finding a number of blood samples there. I mean, you think they would have properly disposed of this before shutting down the hospital since it is biohazardous. But not only that, the labels on the test tubes of blood were labeled with serious infectious diseases. Great. The explorer also found a bunch of patient files, test results, and x-rays. The hospital claimed that this was all destroyed, but clearly it wasn't. In our 3rd spot, we have the tomb of Yin Shi Wang, a very famous and mysterious tomb. Basically, back in 1974 China, a number of farmers were digging around when one of their shovels hit something hard. Upon unearthing it, they found that it was a life-size terracotta soldier. Archaeologists were sent into the site and they found an entire army of thousands of these soldiers. Apparently, there's like 8,000 of them. These were created back in the day to guard the resting spots of emperors. It's quite fascinating, but no one is allowed to go there anymore, not even scientists. Why? Well, they found that the tomb contains a high concentration of mercury, which is deadly. Not only that, but grand tombs like these were often highly guarded. So rumor has it that there are a number of deadly booby traps protecting this area. The first defense is sand. If you disrupt the tomb, the whole mausoleum will fill with sand and suffocate you. The second booby trap is hidden crossbows that will shoot out at you. Then there's also a trap door, and once you fall in, you can't get out. And of course, they have a river of mercury. This is like straight out of an Indiana Jones movie or something, I swear. In our 2nd spot, we have Pluto's Gate. Located in Turkey, Pluto's Gate is considered the gate to hell. Why? Well, any living thing that goes into this cavern is later found dead on the inside. No one ever comes back alive. It's believed that this is because the god Pluto guards the area and kills anyone himself. People have told stories about sending birds into the cavern, only for them to drop dead upon entry. Others have led bulls inside, and they also would not come out alive. To make things scarier, in 2013 residents unearthed 2 marble statues from the area. One was of the 3-headed watchdog Cerberus, and the other was a snake. Both are mythological creatures that are symbols of the underworld. That makes this whole cavern that much more scarier. Maybe it is the way to hell, who knows? And in our number 1 spot today, we have Area 51. Area 51 has to be one of, if not the most mysterious place on this list. The government is hiding a number of secrets in there, including possibly aliens? Well, this is an apparent photo of aliens that Area 51 is keeping in their base. The photo was taken in the 1980s, and years later someone leaked it online. They claim it was taken inside of Area 51. Now, I don't know about you, but those surely look like aliens on an operating table. If this photo isn't from Area 51, then who the hell took it and why? Starting off this countdown, we have the abandoned building. Abandoned buildings are urban explorers' playgrounds, except you have to be extra careful. There's a reason why some of these buildings are abandoned to begin with, and over the years have been subjected to structural failure. In January of 2019, a 21-year-old man and his friends went to explore an abandoned building in Detroit. And entry into the building was banned. Obviously, it was abandoned. In fact, it was getting ready to be demolished. That night, the group of friends decided to play hide and seek. He got separated from his group of friends and they couldn't find him. They decided to come back the next morning and continue to look for him. That's when they found his body on the first floor. Police concluded that he fell through an elevator shaft and to his death. He fell all the way from the 9th floor. That is absolutely terrifying. But before I go any further, make sure you give this video a big thumbs up because it really helps us out and I appreciate it. Moving on to number 9, we have Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia is an island in the central Indian Ocean, part of the British Indian Ocean Territory. In 1966, the people on the island were employees as contract farmers, working on coconut plantations. But in 1968 to 1973, the farm workers were kicked off the island by the UK government, so that the US/UK military could have a joint base on the island. Now, it is off limits to everyone except official personnel, and it's highly guarded and secretive. In fact, some believe it was used by the CIA to torture prisoners. But since it's so closed off to us, we will never know what truly went on over there. Moving on to number 8, we have North Brother Island. North Brother Island is a 20-acre island located in New York City's East River. The island was once home to Riverside Hospital, which was built to quarantine people with smallpox. Since the island was so isolated from others, they thought it was perfect to house the sick there. All those who died there were stored in the island's morgue. Then in 1943, they used the hospital to house people with tuberculosis. From 1951, it served as a rehabilitation center for drug addicts. But by the 60s, it was abandoned. Now that island stays that way and is off limits to the public. The island is very dangerous to visit because the buildings are rotted and deteriorating. Access is forbidden unless you have proper authorization. In our 7th spot, we have the sewer system. So in July of 2018, 2 boys in the Northamptons decided to explore their town, which is fine. But they decided to get into the town's sewer system and explore from down below. I don't know what drew them in, that must have been super stinky. Now, Northampton's sewer system is actually known to be quite complicated and referred to as caverns. So it's no shocker that they prohibit people from entering. And also not a shocker that this pair got lost down there. After being lost for several hours, they were rescued. Thankfully, the rescue team was able to locate their whereabouts and help them get out of the tunnels. Bad news is, they didn't smell the greatest after all this happened. Moving on, number 6, we have Edgewater Medical Center. This abandoned medical center in Chicago is a very popular spot to urban explorers. In fact, little fun fact, this is the place that both Hillary Clinton and serial killer John Wayne Gacy were born. Now, securing the building has always been a problem. No matter how many signs or barricades they put up, people will always find a way to get in. In fact, now they have security guards monitoring the area to prevent people from trespassing. But still, this doesn't ward off the curious-minded. One person that entered this banned location is urban explorer Mike Kinsk. He said he found blood samples, some labeled with serious infectious diseases. He also found several boxes of death records dating back to the 90s. There is apparently also personnel files, test results, x-rays, and more still inside the hospital. In fact, these files were said to be destroyed, but clearly they weren't. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Dulce Base. This one is the definition of creepy, just get ready for it. So the small town of Dulce in New Mexico is said to have a secret underground facility where they do a number of wacky experiments. The first claim of this base was back in the 1930s. From there, the rumors began to skyrocket. Now it's believed that there is a 7-story compound beneath the city, and that's where there are human-animal hybrids and human-alien hybrids. Yeah, it's crazy. This base has very tight security and is regarded as one of the top forbidden places in the world. In our 4th spot, we have Centralia. Ah, yes, this place is making its way back on another one of my lists. Centralia is an abandoned town located in Pennsylvania. It was once a populated town. However, a lot of residents were forced to leave due to unsafe living conditions. This all started after a coal fire ignited underground. This fire has been burning for almost 50 years, and it's predicted to continue for another 200 years. As a result of this fire, tons of sinkholes have formed, and hot smoke is released underground, and carbon monoxide has filled some of the residents' basements. In some parts of the town that are affected, it is said that the ground beneath them has reached up to 900 degrees Fahrenheit, 400 degrees Celsius. But even that won't deter some people. In fact, 7 residents still live there. They refuse to move out of their home. But the US government has done their job to try and erase this city. They took away any signs directing people to this town, removed the town's zip code, and forced most of the residents out. But people still go there to explore, which isn't the best idea. In our third spot, we have Gilman, Colorado. Located in southeastern Eagle County, Gilman was a beautiful town located on the edge of a cliff. But that wasn't the reason why this town was considered dangerous. Around 1984, the Environmental Protection Agency discovered hazardous levels of arsenic, cadmium, copper, lead, and zinc in the soil, surface, and groundwater of this area. It was so toxic that they demanded a full evacuation of this town. Now if you visit the area, you will see tons of signs warning trespassers. The signs say things like hidden and visible dangers and risk of injury or death. So don't go there. In our second spot, we have the Doomsday Vault. I did not know this was a thing, but there is a Doomsday Vault located in Norway. This vault contains 309 samples of seeds from all over the world. So just in case of a huge disaster, people can get to this vault and still be able to rebuild society and, make food. These seeds are highly protected. Only a few people have access to this building. And they are only allowed to go inside on days when they are accepting new seeds. So don't mess around with this vault, okay? It's humanity's lifeline. And in our number 1 spot, we have Bangalore Fort, India. This next place is said to be the most haunted place in India. Back in the 17th century, it was once a thriving town, home to 10,000 people. But rumor has it, all residents deserted their homes overnight. Why? Because it's haunted. Duh. So there are 2 legends surrounding this place. Number 1, there was a man named Madho Singh, and he was given permission to build this fort by the king under one condition. The fort never cast a shadow over his house. He said if this happened, then the city will perish. So this guy obeyed his command and made sure the fort never did. But Singh's successor ignored this and built the walls up higher. This cast a shadow over his house. And that's when the king's curse started. The second legend surrounds a princess named Ratnavati. Now, a man named Tantrik Singha fell in love with her beauty, but she kept refusing his love and advances over and over again. What she didn't know was that he was a magician of the dark arts. So he used a love potion on her by putting it in her perfume. But the princess wasn't dumb. She figured this out and then poured the potion over a huge boulder. This made the dude furious and he placed a curse on the town. And now it's still believed to be cursed/haunted. In fact, entry is banned for all foreigners. You need a special permit to get entry into this fort. And in no means can you ever be there before sunrise and after sunset. According to locals, 3 men decided to stay there after sundown. And things went south. One of the 3 guys fell into a deep well. Thankfully, he was rescued, but on their way to the hospital, all 3 of them got crushed in a freaky road accident and they died. Could this be the fort's curse?
Kicking off the list at number 10, Snake Island. Well, this island already sounds awful. What's going on here? Snake Island is located 95 miles off the coast of Sao Paulo, Brazil. Is that just a name of an island, or do a bunch of snakes live here? Well, sorry to tell you, both. What happened originally was thousands of years ago, the part of the land that once connected the island to mainland disappeared. The ocean rose up before any of these snakes had time to pack their snake bags, and they were stuck on this island forever. These snakes were stuck on the island decade after decade, so now these stuck snakes are just gonna, mate and have more snakes. Now the island's full of snakes. The number of snakes is going up. Higher and higher, it's never stopping. One of the deadliest snakes in the world, the golden lancehead viper, there's over 4,000 of them on this island. It's horrible. Back from 1902 to the early 1920s, a few brave souls lived there and operated the lighthouse. But according to some local myths, the last lighthouse keeper was swarmed by snakes after he left a window open. Worst thing I've ever heard. Let's move on. Number 9. Surtsey Island. While some islands ban humans, others ban humans and seeds. Yeah, no seeds allowed on Surtsey Island. Leave the work snackies behind, my friend. Surtsey Island is an important one on our list here today, as this island was born in 1963. We got a brand new baby island. This new island emerged from the sea 20 miles off the coast of Iceland, and it took around 4 years for Mother Nature to complete this little passion project. An undersea volcano formed this island over the course of 4 years. Just slowly, just making a new island. That's a long, hot process, so now what? What do you do with a brand new island? Sandals Resort? Disney parks? No and nope. Nobody is allowed on this island. The whole idea of Surtsey Island, which I love, is that scientists are trying to study how ecosystems can form themselves without the involvement of us humans. Scientists around the world have all gathered around to do nothing about this island. They're just gonna watch. Only a select few can enter this island, and right before they clock in, they're checked head to toe to make sure they don't have any seeds. 0 seeds. Why? Oh, because scientists found a tomato growing and they were scratching their heads. Where did this come from? How? Out of nowhere, how could it be? They were stumped until they found out somebody went number 2 in that same spot long before. Yeah, welcome to Surtsey Island. Hold it. Better not take a shit here or you're fired, buddy. Number 8. North Sentinel Island. Heading over to India, this island is the home of the Sentinelese tribe, one of the most forbidden islands on the world. We're talking about it, let's do it. Located in the Bay of Bengal, North Sentinel Island is about 1,200 kilometers away from India, and while most islands are shrinking, this one is actually growing. It grew back in 2004 phenomenally. Back in 2004, the island lifted up a couple of meters during an earthquake, so the west and south sides gained an extra kilometer. The inhabitants on North Sentinel Island are among the few uncontacted tribes left in the world. You've probably heard about them or seen the thumbnail at some point. They have apparently been around for thousands of years, but there's no sign of agriculture or even fire. Yet still, this tribe has somehow continued to thrive. If we try and get close, they will attack us. After the 2004 tsunami, the Indian Coast Guard flew over to check on the island, make sure everyone's okay, but once they flew too close, the tribe attacked with arrows. So they could not land, obviously, but what if you arrived by boat? What would happen? Well, also bad. Back in 2006, 2 fishermen lost their lives because they got too close to the island without knowing who was on it. The Sentinelese have lived here for around 60,000 years, and I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. Number 7, Niue Island. Located in Hawaii, Niue Island is quite small, and its population as well is pretty minimal, but why? Where is everyone? This is a beautiful island. Why wouldn't you want to live here? Why do only 170 people live on arguably one of the most beautiful islands in the world? Niue Island has also been referred to as the Forbidden Island, hence why we're including it on our list here today. It was bought back in 1864 by Elizabeth Sinclair, and it's been privately owned since then. So no one knows what's going on, hence the small population. The thing is though, in 1952, the polio epidemic hit the islands and a ban was then put in place permanently. You couldn't leave or enter the island. That's it. Locked down to the extreme. Like an island locked down, that'd be so scary. Nobody got sick, but now if you want to enter the island, you need to gain special access, which is a lot harder than it may seem. Absolutely no tourists or outsiders allowed. Period. It was sold by Hawaii's king Kamehameha back in 1863 to the Robinson family, but as of 1915, no outsiders again are still allowed in. Some island cult behavior is going on here, I don't know. Whoever lives here does so without plumbing, telephone lines, or Netflix. Impressive. Even today, the island is of course off bounds. The Coast Guard is always patrolling the island too as well. What do you think lies on Niue Island? Top secret government stuff? Probably. Number 6, Heard Island. Have you heard about this island? Heard Island? No? Well, listen up. Right in the middle of Antarctica in Australia, there is this island, Heard Island. The Australian government has made it illegal for anybody to visit it, so if you have some free time and a kayak and some suntan lotion, don't even think about it. Go the other way. You won't make it. So why is this island forbidden? Is this one full of deadly snakes? Maybe, honestly. The myth here surrounding Heard Island is that there's animals we don't even know exist living here. We got some secret hybrid animals. This sounds a lot like Jurassic Park so far. The island itself is quite unique geographically. See, Heard Island is home to 2 volcanoes as well as the tallest mountain in Australia. So there's plenty of space for hybrid animals to hide and be scary. I love the idea of animals getting their own island, honestly. We have enough, I'd say. Time to give 1 or 2 back. Except for Snake Island. That one, we don't want that one. You can keep that one for sure. Number 5, North Brother Island. Located right between Rikers Island and the Bronx, quietly tucked away on the East River, North Brother Island was once home to a hospital back in the 19th century. You may be thinking, a hospital on an island? How inconvenient is this? What's going on? Riverside Hospital was available for patients suffering from yellow fever, smallpox, or tuberculosis. So it was a quarantine zone, essentially. The hospital has since been abandoned. It's now sitting there literally falling to pieces. And the island has been quite active, oddly. A body was found near the island recently. A steamship called the General Slocum crashed on the island. There's also a haunted lighthouse on this island. And they even have what's referred to as Coffin Corner on this island. Yeah, Coffin Corner. I'm all set. I'd rather explore the Bronx than explore this island, honestly. Number 4, Robins Island. Okay, we have a forbidden island and it's not cursed. We have a nice one, dare I say. Here we go. The privately owned Robinson Island is massive and beautiful. It's not made of lava or snakes, it's just sand and trees. Just a good time. And best of all, no humans at all. The 435-acre island sits off the coast of New Suffolk, New York. Many names have come and go when it comes to island ownership here, but as of right now, it's forbidden and it's a nature preserve. I'm okay with that. We can stay away from that one. The owner now is a man named Louis Bacon. He has poured time and money into building the sanctuary, and he fears that if anybody else gets involved, the whole thing will just fail. Honestly, considering our number 1 spot, he's got a point. Aside from that side quest that Mr. Bacon's pulling off, Robins Island is also home to the largest population of turtles in the state. So don't worry, he's not completely alone. He's got a bunch of turtles. Number 3, Diego Garcia Island. An island with an airport. Okay, there's got to be something good here, right? Located in the Indian Ocean, Diego Garcia is perhaps one of the most bizarre on this list. Definitely interesting. The island was once a part of the United Kingdom, but in order to settle up a debt in the millions, the UK had to hand it over to the United States. Gee, I wonder what they did with it. Is it a turtle sanctuary? Is it a Forbidden Seed Island Part 2, perhaps? What's the game plan here? What are we doing? Well, today Diego Garcia is a top secret military base. Hence the airport. Although it's forbidden to enter, there's over 600 buildings resting on this island, as well as thousands of military personnel, but again, nobody knows what the island is really hiding, or what it's being used for. Maybe this is where they're keeping the Winter Soldier. Could be. He could punch through anyone. You can punch 6,000 people easily. Number 2, Poveglia Island. The small island of Poveglia has taken many lives. When the bubonic plague arrived in 1348, the island then became a quarantine colony, just like our one earlier. So if you had symptoms, you were sent to this island to... yeah, it was a sad reality, not a lot of solutions back then. Again, in 1630, the Black Death crept in, and once again the center of this island became a mass graveyard. All bad so far. The soil, they say, is 50% human remains at this point. So if you're looking to plant some haunted sunflowers, there you go. There's your soil, weirdo. Today the island is abandoned, rightfully so. It's closed off to both tourists and locals. Hey, now that things are opening up again, what do you say we head to Poveglia Island? Check out some bubonic plague history. No? We're good? All right, cool. We'll go to Niagara Falls. If its dark history doesn't scare you away, the ghost stories surrounding the island might. In the early 20th century, mentally ill patients were sent to this island, but the doctor that was responsible for curing them for all these treatments, he would actually try these bizarre, insane methods. Cruel methods, really. And the doctor himself ended up going mad, and he ended up jumping to his death from the bell tower. The bell tower no longer stands, but the soil is still 50% remains. So either way, ghosts or history, that's a no from me. I would rather go to number 1, Garbage Island. We must finish with this one, the largest island of them all. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Smells good. Smells like the ocean and all the garbage we've thrown into it. It's located in the North Pacific subtropical gyre. There's basically 4 of these large systems just swirling ocean currents, and some of them are chock full of garbage. Pretty disturbing, right? I've heard of the garbage patch before, but I had no idea how large it really was. This trash island is 3 times the size of France. And if that's not big enough for you, it's twice the size of Texas. Someone's like, oh, now I get it. This island is man-made, obviously, and it continues to grow. But it's not all grim, however, for our number 1 spot. There is a team working on reducing that size. The environmental nonprofit Ocean Cleanup has removed around 65,000 pounds of trash. So maybe next time you see this, there'll be only 9 islands. We're hoping.
Starting off this countdown, we have Umoja Village. Located in Kenya, this village was founded in 1990 by a woman named Rebecca Lolosoli. It was created as a safe haven for homeless women, women trying to escape forced marriages, or survivors of violence, etc. The idea came to her while she was in the hospital after being attacked by a group of men. This village is barred off by a fence of thorns to try and prevent men from entering. There are around 27 women and 200 children living at this village. The women that live there still work so they can afford clothes, food, and their shelter. On top of that, their village is open to female tourists with hope that they will come in and buy some of their jewelry. They also charge a fee for anyone that wants to come in. And at number 9 we have University Women's Club. And guys, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel because you know what, it really helps us out, so thank you. This is a female-only club that was founded in 1888 London. It was a space for women to come to just relax and unwind, not having to worry about their household duties or whatever. It was also a professional space where business meetings would take place. This club also offered 22 bedrooms so that you could stay if need be, and 2 big event rooms should you ever need to rent them out for private parties or whatever. This place was open for all women of all ages, just no men. Moving on to number 8, we have the International Club of Paris. The Women's International Club of Paris, or Le WIC de Paris, was a club open to any and all women. Its goal is to get women of all different nationalities living in or around Paris to join this club and share their culture with others in the group. The group does things such as film screenings, book clubs, and would do activities like gymnastics and learn other languages. This club is pretty big. They have 252 members from 52 different countries. Again, there's no men allowed in this club. It's strictly women coming together to learn more about each other and form connections. They also say that the space is non-political and non-religious. They just want everyone to get together as one. Moving on to number 7, we have Noiva de Cordeiro. This is a remote Brazilian village that is home to 600 women. Now, this village is interesting for a number of reasons. Number 1, most of the women living there are 20 to 35 years old, like that's pretty young. On top of that, they are known to be all stunningly beautiful. Now, this village is a bit different than the other places on this list. Men are allowed to visit, but typically they don't live there. But the only time they can visit is on the weekends. They're forced to work away from home, and that's the only time that they have to visit. But most of the women that live there run the show. They work in the field and manage all the village's finances. They're like the bosses. Coming in at number 6, we have New Woman's Space. Founded by Wong and Sandra Hong, New Woman's Space, located in Brooklyn, is a place where women can come together as one. It's located in Williamsburg and is specifically for entrepreneurs or those looking to collaborate with other women. At this location, they have book club meetings and yoga classes. The founder Wong says, and I quote, "Our location means there is no shortage of women submitting new ideas for classes and workshops, who want to host events in every realm you can think of, and those who have found comfort and strength in knowing there is a community space for them." We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the female-only parties. This next city, located in Colombia, is famous for having a men's curfew night. Basically, after a certain time at night, men are banned from leaving their homes. Literally banned. Like, you could be fined for breaking this rule. Meanwhile, the women are free to roam the streets. On these nights, there are women-only concerts, film shows, and parties. Fire and police stations are taken over by female-only crews. It's a time for women to just, let loose and have fun. According to the mayor who created this idea, he said these female-only nights will reclaim public space for the women of Bogota and help men to get to know their homes. Moving on to number 4, we have the sorority. And no, I'm not talking about like a college or university sorority here. The sorority is a club only for women. It's described as an online network for professional women who want to collaborate and inspire others. Most of the meetings take place online. But if you live in London, some members meet regularly at different venues in London. Apparently, there are a couple members of royalty in this club. Now, if you are a female and this interests you and maybe you want to join the club, too bad, too sad. You can only get in by invitation only, so it's a pretty secretive club. On top of that, you have to fill out their pledge, which seems a little culty to me. But anyway, it seems like they want only the elite of the elite to be a part of this club. And our 3rd third spot, we have the secret society. Back in the 1840s, women were caught for having a number of different secret societies in New York. These societies were legit top secret. They didn't want men finding out about them at all. But this plan failed. In 1847, 4 of these secret societies were caught. Back then, it was a pretty big deal. Now, there's not much out there on these societies, like what went down, since it was so long ago. But apparently the government tried to break them up if they heard about them. When 4 clubs got exposed, they realized just how big they were. One society had 2,000 members. Like, that's insane. But yeah, with the amount of members, word was bound to get out sooner or later. In our second spot, we have Woman's Land. Now, this community spells its name Womans, as in W-O-M-Y-N-S, instead of M-A-N-S. Because they literally want nothing to do with men. No man in the name, no man ever allowed in the community. Now, this community was fairly large. It started as a social movement in the 1970s in the US, Australia, New Zealand, and Western Europe. Basically, it was a group of women that wanted to escape the patriarchal society. So they decided to make their own community. Many of them still exist today. Back then, these women lived in the woods on private land. And honestly, a lot of people didn't know they existed. Some were meant specifically for women that identified as lesbian, others were for women traveling across countries alone and needed a safe place to stay. Nowadays, there are still a few of these communities left. These women live in small cabins or shacks. The only issue is that these women are getting older and need a new generation of younger women to come and keep these communities alive. But not a lot of younger women are interested in this. And in our number 1 spot, we have Supershi Island. Located off the coast of the Baltic Sea, the Supershi Island is a secret vacation destination for only women. It's owned by a woman named Christina Roth. She first discovered this island while on vacation in Finland. From there, she purchased it and spent months doing massive renovations. Now the island has 4 renovated cabins that can hold up to 10 women. The whole purpose of this island is to look after the wellness of the female mind, bodies, and souls. While on the island, you can partake in a number of activities including yoga, meditation, kayaking, and hiking. Now, don't be fooled. It's not like you can just book a trip there and you're all set. No, you actually need to fill out an application. On the form, you have to write to Christina why you want to go to the island. And she is specifically looking for people that aren't just writing BS, but like actually truly want to go to the island to better themselves.
Starting off our list at number 10, Lake Natron. Okay, we got a few bodies of water on this list, and each one is horrible in their own unique way. This is considered one of the most inhospitable areas of the world. The lake's extreme levels of sodium carbonate decahydrate make the water corrosive to human skin and eyes, so you don't want to look at this stuff or touch it, just back away pretty much. But the only animal that you'll see that's bigger than bacteria is a flamingo. Yeah, the protection of this lake is vital for us and also flamingos and wildlife. Save them by not tubing in this lake. Awesome. Number 9, Death Valley. With a name like Death Valley, it's gotta be pretty bad, right? There's a Death Valley in Zelda. That one sucks, I don't know. Death Valley sits on the California-Nevada border. It's known, of course, for its extreme heat. One of the hottest places on Earth, in fact. The only deserts on the planet that come close to the same level of heat here is in the Middle East and Africa, and on peak heat days, you know what I mean? It's like a different planet, Death Valley. It's horrible. Back in July 2018, Death Valley was the hottest place the Earth has ever seen. Broke records. For 4 days in a row, the average temperature went as high as 127 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 52 degrees Celsius. Imagine it's 52 outside. I'm sweating thinking about Death Valley. It feels like it's 52 degrees in that parking lot outside. I don't know why, but it's so hot right now. Number 8, Skeleton Coast. Again, another lovely name right off the hop. This one is not from a Zelda game, not yet at least, but it sits north of Namibia. It reaches from the South Kikine River to the Swakop River. It again lands on the deadly places on Earth list, but this time, why? There's water here, right? We could just cool down if need be, right? While the area, firstly, if its name didn't tip you off, is covered in skeletons. Nothing can survive here due to its harsh climates and toxic water, and you guessed it, human activity. Yeah, we kind of ruined this one as well. Humans tend to make things worse. Who knew? Number 7, Israel Cursed Tomb. here we go, into the mummy franchise. Let's do it. A secret tomb was discovered in Israel only a couple of months ago. Now, this is the first time a tomb has been found at the UNESCO World Heritage Site in 65 years, so it's quite a big deal. The actual cave itself was discovered a year ago, but these smaller chambers are now being found recently, right? As in like a month or two ago recently. It's exciting on one page, but on the other, it's scary because some tombs are cursed. This one came with a message. It vows to curse anybody who would open said grave. And this message is written in blood red, just to make it more horrible. So yeah, can we not open this one? Maybe? I don't know. Last time we had a black sarcophagus in Egypt, people were sticking their heads in, and then, I don't know, a pandemic arrived 2 years later, so let's stop. Number 6, Egyptian tomb. We're all curious about what happens after you die, right? But nobody celebrated the end of your days like the ancient Egyptians. It was beautiful. Some tombs are cursed, others are, nice. Ancient Egyptians would paint doors, they would leave valuables. Any new tomb we discover now provides more hints as to what lies beyond, perhaps. An ancient necropolis was discovered only a few years ago, again in Egypt, and in it contained dozens of coffins and a necklace that holds a message from the afterlife. Nice, now we're talking. We love little spoilers. Give us a hint. What can we expect? What should I wear? What's cover up there? This site is around 2,000 years old, and they're in the process currently of excavating it as we speak. But so far, the tombs and artifacts found, officials think, belong to an ancient priestess. A message from the afterlife is pretty spectacular, but what does it say? Well, we're still waiting to find out, but we're close. We're getting into the right, James Webb's looking up, we're looking down. This is good. I'm terrified either way. Number 5, Chernobyl. Of course, one of the greatest nuclear disasters ever. We have to talk about it. Back on April 26, 1986, reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl power complex went off due to unstable and low power levels. Reactor 4 had been shut down a day before due to maintenance, and the next day at 1:23 a.m., radioactive debris compiled of fuel and reactor components just rained down over the building. Toxic fumes were carried from the wind, and after just 4 months, 28 workers had passed away due to radiation exposure, and the whole area had to be shut down. Eventually, they had to evacuate over 100,000 residents, and to this day, that zone is a no-go. Reactor 4 will stay highly radioactive for another 20,000 years, yet there's some residents who apparently still live there. Somehow. How terrifying is that? Number 4. The Forbidden City. Of course, we have to mention this one. Located in Beijing, China, the Forbidden City has quite the reputation. I'm never going near this one. This building used to be the Imperial Palace, and of course, like other places on this list, it's not littered with tourists, but this time for unobvious reasons. This building has quite the grim history, so the amount of reports that come in, sightings of demons, there's a lot. Apparently there's a lot of demons just lurking around. The number of ghostly encounters shot up once the palace opened to the public in the 1940s. In many of these cases, visitors would report seeing a ghostly woman dressed in, you guessed it, all white, the classic ghost apparel. More often than not, you can find her ghost wandering the palace at night, weeping. Yeah, tourists say they hear a woman weeping in the hallways. I can't tell if I'm sad or scared. A little bit of both. Number 3, Lake Acid. Not to be confused with Lake Placid, although that one's also pretty bad in its own unique way. The Lake of Acid is in Ethiopia, and since we mentioned super acid earlier, I figured this would be a good one to bring out. It's also referred to as the gateway to hell. The Danakil Depression is made of boiling hot ponds that release chlorine and sulfur gases into the air. So you don't have to look, you don't have to touch, you can just inhale and you're doomed. Just simply standing around this lake can kill you. So where does something like this come from besides, I don't know, science fiction? This is horrible. How does a lake of acid just come to be? What the f? Like, you know what I mean? It's a lake of acid. Can we get rid of it? This horrifying landscape is the result of 3 continental plates being torn apart. It's part of the East African Rift System. Not 1, but 2 active volcanoes surround the Danakil Depression. Hence the, bubbling magma lurking below the dry landscape. That's what does it. It's one of the hottest places on Earth for a reason. Active hydrothermal ozones aren't new. That's what Yellowstone National Park is, but you need a gas mask to go to this one, so, We're camping over here, we're dying over here. Let's avoid it. Number 2, North Sentinel Island. Heading over to India, this island is the home of the Sentinelese tribe. You've probably heard about this at some point. Don't go here. One of the most forbidden islands in the world, okay? But why? Located in the Bay of Bengal, North Sentinel Island is about 1,200 kilometers from India. And while most islands are shrinking, this one actually grew back in 2004. The island actually lifted up a couple of meters during an earthquake, so the universe is like, yes, more. The inhabitants on this floating cursed island are among the few uncontacted tribes left in the world, right? They haven't heard of the new iPhone or any of that. They're completely out of touch. They've been there for thousands of years and they're not going anywhere because, well, we're not trying to get close. There's no sign of agriculture or even fire, yet this tribe has thrived. If we try and get close, they try and drive everybody away. In fact, back in 2006, 2 fishermen lost their lives because they got too close to the island without knowing who or what was on it. The Indian government didn't roll up to the beach and start interrogating or arresting locals. Instead, it's now completely forbidden to go to this island. Yeah, just leave them. Let people be. For once in our human lives, please. And finally, number 1, North Brother Island. Located right between Rikers Island and the Bronx, quietly tucked away on the East River, North Brother Island is a very different looking place when it comes to New York. It's quiet. Everywhere else is busy and full of hot dogs and pigeons and people yelling in cabs. This place over here, eerily quiet. North Brother Island was once home to a hospital back in the 19th century. Oh, nice, how helpful is that? You may be thinking a hospital on an island. One, that's pretty inconvenient. Just rowing patients out there, you're like, hang on buddy. Riverside Hospital was available for patients suffering from yellow fever, smallpox, tuberculosis. It was a quarantine zone, right? Although the hospital has since been abandoned, it's now sitting there just falling apart. Just cursed land. We love that. The island has been quite active though, in a way. A body was found near the island, a steamship crashed on the island, there's a haunted lighthouse on the island, and they even have what's referred to as Coffin Corner. I thought Coffee Time was bad. Coffin Corner, that's pretty, I'm all set. I'd rather explore the Bronx than explore this island, to be honest with you.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Tristan da Cunha. Tristan is a group of volcanic islands that is located in the South Atlantic Oceans, and it is actually the most remote inhabited archipelago in the world. These islands are around 2,787 kilometers off the coast of Cape Town, 2,437 kilometers from St. Helena, and 4,002 kilometers off of the coast of the Falkland Islands. The population is around 258 people, and they do speak English, but they have also invented their own dialects with words that are reflective of their various places of origin, which is super cool. Tristan is a British overseas territory with its own constitution, and its capital is named Edinburgh of the Seven Seas. To get to Tristan, you're going to have to fly to Cape Town at a time where you can jump on one of the few boats that travel to Tristan in a year. This doesn't seem so bad, but just remember that the boat trip is going to take you about 5 or 6 days to get there, so you might want to take a couple extra weeks vacation if this is your post-pandemic vacation. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Pitcairn Island. Pitcairn Island is one of the group of 4 islands that make up the Pitcairn Islands. This specific one is the only one of the 4 that is actually inhabited, with a population of 56. All of the residents descend from a group of sailors who committed mutiny on the HMS Bounty in 1789 and the few Tahitian captives they had with them. This island is located in the Pacific Ocean, close to the middle between New Zealand and Peru. This island is open for tourist visits and is said to feature some stunning scenery, but it's not necessarily the easiest place to get to, although as their tourism industry grows, it does get easier. First, you have to get to Tahiti, so if you already live there or live close, you're already one step ahead of the rest of us. Then you have to take a local flight to Mangareva, which only happens about once a week. From there, you'll have to take a boat to Rikatia, and from there, you used to have to take a boat called Claymore II, which used to only depart once every 3 months, but luckily it's a bit easier now since 2019. The government has been operating the MS Silver Supporter, which sets sail every week. Tourists will stay at what are called homestays, as it is such a great way for visitors to get a feel of the local environment, as well as providing income for the residents of the island. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far. In our number 8 spot today, we have Macquarie Island. Okay, this island is cool. Macquarie is located in the southwest Pacific Ocean between New Zealand and Antarctica. The only human inhabitants of this island are the scientists who work at the research base on the island, so depending on the time of year, there's around 20 to 40 people here. But here's where things get really cool. During the breeding season, this island is home to the entire world population of white-chested penguins. That means that there could be around 2 million penguins on the island at one time, greatly outnumbering the humans there. This island has had quite
a tumultuous ecological history after the onset of European visits in 1810. The island's fur seals, elephant seals, and penguin populations began to decline since they were being killed for fur and blubber, and of course there was the introduction of rodents from the boats, cats to keep the rodents from eating the human food stores, and rabbits which were brought to breed for food, which threw the entire island ecology totally off balance. It wasn't until very recently that efforts began to restore a more natural ecological balance to the island, and as of 2014, the island was officially declared pest-free after 7 years of strong conservation efforts. This was actually the largest successful island pest eradication program up until that date, which is certainly something to celebrate. Humans caused a major problem, and while it took much too long to fix, I guess the bright side is that it happened at some point. In our number 7 spot today we have Omeaucan. Omeaucan is located in Russia, and if you've heard of it before, there's a chance it might be because it is known as the coldest inhabited place on Earth. This town has a population of around 500 residents who live in an average temperature of around -40 degrees Celsius, although in the summertime the temperature does get to around 0 degrees. The ground is covered in permafrost, which of course makes growing crops an impossibility, so the main source of food is meat and fish. Due to the temperature here, living of course has to look a little different. It's too cold for plumbing pipes, so restrooms are usually outhouses, engines freeze easily, so cars are usually running continuously, and during the shortest days the residents live in darkness for 21 hours a day. Getting to this small town can take quite some time as well. If you're coming from Moscow, you'll have to take a flight to one of the closest towns, which are both still over 900 kilometers away. The road from these cities that leads to the town is called the Road of Bones, which is extremely ominous sounding and probably a road that should not be traveled alone. In our number 6 spot today we have Easter Island. Okay, so most of us have heard of Easter Island before, but did you know that it's one of the most remote places? Remember the Pitcairn Island we talked about before? Well, that island is the closest inhabited place to Easter Island, so clearly they're both pretty difficult to access. The closest continental point to Easter Island is a point in central Chile that is 3,512 kilometers away. Easter Island is of course a huge tourist destination as people come from all over to marvel at the iconic Moai statues that the island is famous for. There is much debate over when the island first became inhabited, with some experts claiming it to be around 800 CE, while others swear it was around 1200 CE, but either way the original inhabitants created an incredible thriving life on the island. The island is currently home to around 3,300 residents, and in 2007 the island was given the constitutional status of a special territory. In our number 5 spot today we have Itorkotomi. This town is located in one of the most remote areas of Greenland and actually requires a helicopter ride from the nearest airport in order to actually get to the town. It was founded quite recently, actually in 1925, by a Danish polar explorer and around 80 Inuit settlers, and is as far as you can get from any other inhabited area in Greenland. Despite this recent settling, based on ruins and other archaeological remains, it became clear that this area was once inhabited sometime in our history by Inuit populations of the past. There's around 450 residents, and the town is known for its wildlife that includes polar bears, muskoxen, and seals. This place can be a popular tourist destination because of the stunning northern lights as well as other natural wonders. Cruise ships also love to stop here, but that can be a little tricky considering 9 months out of the year, sea ice will block any ship from docking. In our number 4 spot today we have the Siwa Oasis. Siwa is an urban oasis between the Katara Depression and the Great Sand Sea in the Western Desert. This oasis is one of Egypt's most isolated settlements, but it is home to around 33,000 people. The residents have developed a unique and isolated desert culture and language called Siwi, but they are also fluent in an Egyptian dialect of Arabic. The oasis isn't necessarily a super popular tourist destination as the closest city is Cairo, and the oasis is around a 5-hour bus ride away and is of course in the middle of the desert, but those who do take the trip certainly aren't disappointed. If visiting, you can enjoy some locally grown dates and olives, which I can only imagine are incredible. You can swim in Cleopatra's Bath, which is a mineral spring, and you can even stay at the Desert Eco Lodge, which is built from mud and salt. Tourism is actually a vital source of income for the oasis, so visitors are definitely welcomed. Because of how isolated Siwa is, the culture and traditions of the people who live here really have been preserved, which would make it such an interesting and wonderful place to visit. If I ever get the incredible opportunity of going to Egypt, I think Siwa would be on the top of the list for places to visit. In our number 3 spot today we have La Rinconada. This town is located near the Peruvian Andes, very close to a gold mine, and is actually the highest permanent settlement in the world tripled at 5,100 meters above sea level. Between 2001 and 2009, the population of the town increased greatly because the price of gold rose 235% during that time. Because of the elevation, the town has an alpine tundra climate and an average temperature of around 1 degree Celsius. Many of those who work for the gold mines here work under a pretty horrible condition of working 25 days of the month for no pay, and then 5 days of the month they can work for themselves and they're allowed to take as much ore as they can carry on their shoulders. But there's no guarantee that the ore will have any gold in it, however, and this terrible system is why many of the town's residents live in poverty. The town is a 6-hour bus ride from the nearest city on unpaved roads, and there isn't really a regular bus schedule, which makes it a fairly difficult place to go. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Cocos Islands. The Cocos Islands are an Australian external territory located in the Indian Ocean and comprises a small archipelago that is around halfway between Australia and Sri Lanka. The Cocos Islands consist of 2 coral atolls that are made up of 27 different coral islands. Out of these 27 islands, only 2 of them are inhabited, with a population of around 600 in total. Because of the isolation of the islands, the people who live here have really kept their language and religious practices as well as other traditions alive, which is such a great thing. Visitors of course have so much to learn about the inhabitants' traditions, but other than that, tourists can go kite surfing, snorkeling, surfing, and bird watching. One of the islands was actually even voted to have the best beach in Australia. One of the islands does actually have an airport with 1 single runway, and a flight can be taken to the island from the closest city, which is Perth, at 2,700 miles away, but the flights only happen around twice a week. In our number 1 spot today, we have Palmerston Island. Palmerston Island is a coral atoll located in the Cook Islands in the Pacific Ocean. Palmerston is a very small islet in a series of small islets that are located on a ring of coral reef that encloses a lagoon. The only one of these islets that is inhabited is one that's named home. The closest island to Palmerston is Rarotonga, which is the capital of the Cook Islands, and it would be about a 2-day sailing trip to make it the 500-kilometer distance. But if you aren't already on that island or planning to stop at both islands, the closest trip would be about an 8-day sail from Tahiti. Since the islet is so small, there of course is no airport, so ships are the only way to get here, and supply ships only visit the inhabited island a few times a year. The reef only allows room for smaller boats to pass through, which makes any kind of larger ship unsafe to pass. The island does see a tropical climate, but it is very exposed to tropical cyclones, which of course would cause a whole bunch of problems. Starting off our list, in our number 10 spot, we have Gangkar Puensum. This mountain has a long history of disputes on where exactly it is located, but for today's video, we'll call it on the border of Bhutan and China, which I believe is what has been settled on by researchers. This mountain is the largest mountain that has been unclimbed by humans and stands at a height of 7,570 meters or 24,836 feet. Studies and measurements of this mountain started almost 100 years ago in 1922, but it wasn't until much more recently that we began to acquire actually accurate details about it. The name of the mountain means White Peak of the Three Spiritual Brothers, which becomes an important part of why this mountain remains unclimbed. In 1983, the mountain became open for mountaineering, but between 1985 and 1986, there were 4 separate expeditions that tried to summit it and failed. Because of what we spoke about before and how there were disputes on the location and inaccurate information, the first group who tried to summit it couldn't even find the mountain at all. In 1994, the climbing of mountains in Bhutan higher than 6,000 meters became prohibited due to spiritual beliefs, and in 2003, mountaineering became prohibited entirely. This is why the mountain remains unsummited, and while I'm sure it would be an amazing expedition for climbers, I think the idea of it remaining untouched is actually quite nice. And who knows what is going on up there in terms of ecology due to it being left alone. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Star Mountains. This massive mountain range is located in Papua New Guinea, and although we of course know about it, much of the area remains completely untouched by humans. This area is thought to be one of the wettest places on the earth, as it sees more than 10,000 millimeters of rain every year. At that point, you wonder why they're still measuring in millimeters, but hey, I'm not a weatherman. Due to the rain and just how torrential the downpour is, there isn't a spot in the entire range that can house a weather station. There was an attempt made to explore the range in 1959 by a man named Jan Sneap who wanted to try and map out the area, and it was slightly successful, but not without struggle. During the expedition they had 2 helicopters, but due to the altitudes one of them ended up crashing and they were forced to rely on their own manpower from then on. While this of course would suggest that humans have of course at some point visited the mountain range, as I previously mentioned, there are most definitely areas that remain unvisited by humans, and it's probably for the best if we leave it that way. In our number 8 spot today we have the Namib Desert. This desert stretches more than 1,200 miles and is located along the Atlantic coast of Angola, Namibia, and South Africa. This desert is recognized as one of the driest places in the entire world, so exactly the opposite of the Star Mountains we just discussed. Compared to that 10,000 millimeters of rain from before, this desert is said to only receive 2 millimeters of water per year, which seems like a much more reasonable time to measure in millimeters. It also means that there's certainly not a lot of living species in this area, but anything that does live in this desert needs to be able to survive on the smallest amount of water possible, so humans definitely aren't top of the list for that. Not only is this thought to be one of the oldest deserts in the world, but it is also thought to be the home to more endemic species than any other desert in the world. This means species that are found in that specific region and nowhere else on Earth. There are less barren and dry areas of the desert that are currently inhabited by smaller settlements and some indigenous groups, but most of the area is totally unlivable. In our number 7 spot today we have the center of the Earth. This should be one that's fairly straightforward, but if you're sitting there wondering why we've never been to the core of the Earth, I'm here to let you know. Basically, it's way too hot. But let's break it down even further than that. Basically, if you were trying to dig a hole to the core of the Earth, you'd start with the crust of the Earth, which is the thinnest of the 3 main layers, but humans haven't even gone through this entire layer yet, even in the deepest holes on Earth. Around 4,000 meters down you'll pass the deepest mine on Earth, but that mine uses ice to keep its workers cool since it's about 60 degrees Celsius down there. At 12,260 meters you'll get to the point of the deepest hole on Earth, the Kola Super Deep Borehole, and you'll be sitting in 180 degrees Celsius, but it won't be until you get to 40,000 meters that you'll get into the second main layer. The second layer is called the mantle and is responsible for 84% of the planet's volume. Here you'll be sitting at 1,000 degrees Celsius, which is about the temperature it feels on a humid day in Toronto, and you'll be drilling through rock. Just to cut to the chase a little bit, because we could sit here all day talking about the things you'll encounter on the journey, such as diamonds, by 3 million meters down you'll reach the third layer, which is the outer core. This will see temperatures that are similar to the surface of the sun. By 5 million meters you'll reach the core, and if you can just dig another 1.5 million meters, at 6.4 million you'll reach the center of the core of the Earth. There'd be no gravity here, and you'd need a super heat and super pressure proof submarine that can cut through some of the hardest materials and moves like a rocket in space in order to take on this journey. So once that's invented, we'll get right on that trip. In our number 6 spot today we have the Sakha Republic. Russia is the largest country in the world, but there's an area in it which is the 8th largest territory in the world, and it remains mostly untouched by humans. This area is so large it's only slightly smaller than India. The majority of this territory is above the Arctic Circle, making it basically like a desert except the freezing cold kind. There is so little of a population in this area that if all the residents were spread out, there would be more than a square mile in between each resident, but here's the thing. You can't really live in most of this region. I mean, you can, but not without extreme difficulty. The ground is covered by permafrost, which of course has a huge impact on the ecology of the region. There is a mountain range that is located within this region, and that range is known as the coldest area in the northern hemisphere, so that says a lot. Because of the extreme weather, much of this region has gone unexplored and untouched by man, and I honestly can completely understand why. In our number 5 spot today we have Mariana Trench. About 71% of the Earth is covered in water, and yet the oceans are the places we know the least about, which is kind of terrifying. Mariana Trench is located in the western part of the Pacific Ocean, just east of the Philippines, and is the deepest part of our planet's oceans. The trench is in the shape of a crescent and is about 2,550 kilometers long and 69 kilometers wide. Its exact depth is unknown, but what we do know is that if we took Mount Everest and put it in the trench, its summit would still be underwater by by more than 2 kilometers, so it's safe to say it's pretty deep. The pressure that deep in the ocean is far too great for humans to withstand, the temperature is just above freezing, and it is incredibly dark down there, which makes it a perfect recipe of a place that we should stay the heck away from. There has been a very small number of divers who explored what is called the Challenger Deep, which is the deepest known spot of the trench, but of course not without super heavy duty equipment, and no one has been able to stay there for an extended amount of time. So of course, like I just mentioned, there have been some people who have head down to some deep, dark parts of the trench, but most of it remains a mystery to all of us, and that includes what exactly lives down there. In our number 4 spot today we have the Kamchatka Peninsula. Russia has made it on this list again, but this one is the exact opposite of the last one we talked about. From a frozen desert, we are now talking about a volcano belt. This belt contains 160 different volcanoes, 29 of which are still active today. One active volcano is enough for me to stay away from, so 29 certainly sounds like a place everyone should stay away from. There have been a few people who have studied the region over the years, but certainly not many. Other than the high amounts of volcanic activity, which of course are an extreme danger to anyone even close to the area, because of thousands upon thousands of years of forming volcanic rock, the area only gets more difficult to explore as time goes on. This is what has led to this area being one of the least explored places we have on our beautiful Earth. But seriously, looking at pictures of how stunning this place looks makes me want to ignore everything I just said and travel there to see it in real life with my very own eyes. In our number 3 spot today we have Greenland. Okay, bear with me on this one because you're probably sitting there thinking I'm crazy for putting Greenland on this list, but I promise I'm not. Well, I think I'm not, and I'll let you be the judge. Of course I know Greenland is an inhabited country, and although Vikings landed there all the way back in 1000 CE, there are so many parts of the farthest northern regions that we simply just don't know much about. Like even as recently as 1999, there were only 6 newly discovered untouched islands just off the coast, and there is so much of the inland part of the country that remains uninhabited. Greenland is the largest island on Earth at an amazing 8 million square miles, but 80% of that is covered in ice, which makes it extremely difficult to traverse. Like in some parts, the ice is as thick as 3,200 meters, and it's been that way for about 400,000 to 800,000 years. There is a super low population on Greenland, considering the harsh conditions just don't really make it a super ideal place to live, travel, or explore. In our number 2 spot today we have Vale do Javari. This place is part of the Amazon rainforest in Brazil and is fully one of the most unexplored places in the entire world. Not only is it the home to some extremely deadly creatures, it also sees extremely heavy rainfall, which causes heavy flooding and extreme currents in the river, which make it not only uninhabitable but also difficult and dangerous to explore. Despite what I just mentioned, however, it is believed that one of our world's uncontacted tribes actually lives here. These people are able to live in this area and thrive without almost all of the things we use in our daily lives, and they remain uncontacted for a few reasons, but the main one being because we don't want to spread our diseases to them, which would likely wipe out their entire population, because that would be horrible and absolutely devastating, which we all know about very well. Because of this tribe of people and us not wanting to ruin their home, they're actually federally protected, and so is their land. There have been instances of no contact laws being broken by people like drug traffickers, but the government continues to protect these people and the land, and it will remain unexplored except by those who live there. It would be amazing to hear their stories, but I'm glad that we are doing what we can to protect them, because if they want to contact us, they know where we are. In our number 1 spot today we have the Singhi National Park. The Singhi National Park is located on the western edge of Madagascar, but today I want to talk about the 2 large geographical features in the park, which are Big Singhi and Little Singhi. Singhi can be translated into English as roughly where one cannot walk barefoot, and when you see it, you'll realize this name makes a lot of sense. These rock formations are plateaus that have had deep ruts cut into them by groundwater, which has left them totally unable to be walked on or through. This whole area is incredibly fascinating and is the home to many endemic species because of its unusual geomorphology. Many of these species are found only within extremely small areas within the Singhis because the summit, slope, and base of one limestone needle will all form completely different ecosystems, which is absolutely unbelievable. The Singhis are a perfect example of what happens when humans leave a place alone and let nature and the earth just exist. It would be an amazing place to go and explore, but because of the nature of the limestone rhinestone needles, we just can't, and that truly is probably for the best. Starting off this list, at our number 10 spot we have the Yellowstone Hot Spring. Yellowstone is known for its immense natural beauty, and one of the main attractions are its hot springs. Despite being attractive, however, these guys are not made for life to thrive. They are near the boiling point of water, and they are also acidic enough to dissolve nails. Definitely not the hot tub I want to be diving in, but despite this extreme environment, there are some microbes that absolutely thrive there. This teeny tiny form of life is sometimes responsible for giving the springs these super vivid, otherworldly colors. It is said that the most famous of all of the microbes in Yellowstone is a heat-loving bacteria called Thermus aquaticus, which apparently makes an enzyme that researchers use in genetic labs to make copies of DNA. Other life forms found include microbes that have the ability to eat hydrogen, and at the hot springs there was even a recent discovery of a completely new phylum of bacteria that can photosynthesize. In our number 9 spot today we have Centralia, Pennsylvania. This door to hell is located in Pennsylvania underneath the cracked asphalt of one town's streets. Under these streets is an underground coal mine fire that was first set ablaze in 1962, and it just may continue burning for another couple hundred years, or maybe forever if it really is the entrance to hell like they say. It is unknown exactly how the fire was started, which is the topic of many arguments, but it quickly burned through all of the old networks of shafts and tunnels. After the fire started, sinkholes began to appear all over, and steam plumes, which were full of lethal amounts of carbon monoxide, began to rise from the ground. People started to compare what was going on underneath the city to what hell must be like. Once 1984 rolled around, the government began urging people to leave the city and even claimed to help with relocating costs, but as of 2013 there were 8 residents who refused to leave, and they ended up settling a lawsuit that included a $349,500 settlement and the right to reside in the town until the end of their lives. In our number 8 spot today we have the Mariana Trench. This deep dark place is marked as the deepest point on Earth, and it is not the most friendly environment. Not only is it cloaked in darkness, but it also has immense pressure that we certainly cannot withstand. Close to the surface of the ocean, we're sitting at a base of 1 atmospheric pressure, and when you go just 10 meters deep, that number already doubles. Considering the Mariana Trench is 11,000 meters deep, this is obviously going to increase greatly. The pressure causes the air in your body to compress, and the deeper you go, the more dense the water becomes. While the concept of increasing pressure is easy to understand, it truly is hard to conceptualize how this change happens and just how deep this trench really is. 1 atmospheric pressure is 1.01325 bars, which is the unit used to measure pressure. So, like I mentioned before, this is where we are sitting when we are close to the surface of the ocean, but in the depths of the Mariana Trench, that number skyrockets to 1,086 bars, which apparently would be the equivalent of 100 elephants standing on you. That's a little easier to understand. So it's suddenly making a lot more sense as to why people don't journey down to the Challenger Deep very often, but despite that, this is a place that is absolutely teeming with life. In our number 7 spot today we have hydrothermal vents. Speaking of the Mariana Trench, located here is a part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, which is a tectonically active region where plates are colliding and causing subduction, which is how the trench itself was formed. Through this tectonic activity, as seawater seeps downward through the oceanic crust, it gets really hot and becomes very rich in chemicals. This leads to the water becoming so buoyant that it comes back out of the surface of the sea floor, and this is what is called a hydrothermal vent. The water coming out of the vent is that same super hot, super chemically rich water, and it is an extremely important part of underwater ecosystems. The water from the vent is highly acidic and hot, while the water in the depths of the ocean is slightly basic and freezing cold. There are many different smaller species who come to the vent areas because of the chemicals in the water as well as the heat, which helps certain types of food sources grow, which they then want to consume. This then leads to it being a feeding hotspot, as larger predators can also come to the vent to feed on other smaller organisms that are already feeding in the area. There are usually a high amount of animals found in the area of a hydrothermal vent, but not a wide variety of different animals, as the temperature extreme is not suited for everyone in the deep sea. In our number 6 spot today we have the Galapagos Islands. Okay, this is one of my favorite on this entire list because it's just so crazy. Basically, the Galapagos Islands were pretty inhospitable to life, and you might be thinking, well, things live there, so how could that be true? These islands emerged in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, sort of as the cap on a still active volcano. That still active part is definitely a key there. The heat from the volcanoes basically sterilized them, and not only this, but they were 600 miles from land. Everything that lives on the island now naturally found its way there. Plants with seeds who flew through the wind, animals that rode in somehow now on a current, vegetation that came on the back of a turtle. It truly is just remarkable. Of course, humans have interfered now and brought some different species, but even so, it really is just a very cool origin story. In our number 5 spot today, we have a nuclear reactor. This is probably the one place we could all just fully agree that life shouldn't exist, right? Well, there is one bacteria that is so hardy and so tough it can actually grow and thrive here. Deinococcus radiodurans is the most tough bacteria on Earth. It can withstand even the most extreme conditions such as cold, dehydration, vacuum, and acid, but the craziest part is that it is virtually radiation proof. These little microbes can withstand several thousand times the amount of radiation a human can withstand, as well as more radiation than any other bacteria on Earth. This superpowered bacteria is so strong that scientists can't quite figure out how it got this way. This has led to a hypothesis that suggests this bacteria may actually be from an alien planet, perhaps even Mars. Jury is still out on that for sure, but either way, a nuclear reactor is still pretty intense. In our number 4 spot today, we have the stratosphere. Yep, I really mean the stratosphere. This is the layer of the atmosphere of the Earth that sits about 6 miles above the ground. Deserts, such as the Sahara, are known for their massive dust storms that move millions of tons of soil each year, and there are tons and tons of microbes that move with them. Researchers have been able to collect microbes in the dust at altitudes of over 11 miles high. There are bacteria, there are fungi, there are viruses, there is stuff that you don't even want to know about there. This is all to say that even that high in the atmosphere, you could still get a cough. In our number 3 spot today, we have Lake Vostok. Many of us have heard of Atlantis, but have you heard of Lake Vostok? This lake is located in Antarctica, and it is so huge it is one of the largest lakes in the entire world. The lake not only has a large surface area, but it's also quite deep, which only adds to the volume of this lake. It's the lakiest lake out there, and here's the thing about it. It is covered by ice, and not just any ice, but the East Antarctic ice sheet, which is just the largest ice sheet in the world. This subglacial lake has ice so thick that we really don't know a lot about what lies beneath it, and this ice has been there for millions of years. But when the first samples of the actual lake water were taken, it became apparent that there may be species in this lake we know absolutely nothing about. So basically, it's just a lake that's been sealed for millions of years, and it's freezing cold, and life really does exist there. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Danakil Depression. The Danakil Depression is part of the Afar Triangle in Ethiopia, and it is a geological depression that came about as a result of Africa and Asia moving apart. The divergence of 3 tectonic plates caused rifting and volcanic activity. This place is the hottest place on Earth in terms of average year-round temperatures, and it is also one of the lowest places on Earth at 100 meters below sea level. There are active volcanoes in the area, there are salt springs, sulfur springs, and it only gets about 4 to 8 inches of rain every year. What I'm saying is that the place is stunning and has an incredibly rich geological history, but it isn't very hospitable. Despite that, there are people who call this place home. The Afar people have called this area home for many years, and of course that poses the question of how. Well, the biggest industry in the Danakil Depression is salt, and many of the people who live here will mine salt with their hands and then take a 2-day camel journey into the next town to sell it. The people who live here also have to deal with an average temperature of 35 degrees Celsius, but sometimes it can get as hot as 50 degrees Celsius. Somehow they have overcome the odds and the obstacles and managed to thrive in this extreme environment, and it is said that this was made possible over the centuries by their ability to adapt to need less food and water than other humans. Honestly, it's one of the most remarkable things I've ever heard. In our number 1 spot today, we have La Rinconada. This town is located near the Peruvian Andes, very close to a gold mine, and is actually the highest permanent settlement in the world at 5,100 meters above sea level. Between 2001 and 2009, the population of the town increased greatly because the price of gold rose 235% during that time. Because of the elevation, the town has an alpine tundra climate and an average temperature of around 1 degree Celsius. The city has no running water or sewage, and the population of people who live here are working themselves to the bone in extremely dangerous mercury-filled mines. They're also working under some pretty horrible conditions where they work 25 days of the month for no pay, and then 5 days of the month they can work for themselves, and they're allowed to take as much ore as they can carry on their shoulders. There's no guarantee that the ore will have any gold in it, however, and this terrible system is why many of the town's residents live in poverty. The town is a 6-hour bus ride from the nearest city on unpaved roads, and there isn't really a regular bus schedule, which makes it a fairly difficult place to get to.